The Remainers are patting themselves on the back after a bumpy week in UK politics. This is the bill that has passed through the House of Commons and now passed through the House of Lords, waiting for Royal Assent, that would block Boris Johnson getting a no-deal Brexit delivered on or before 31st of October. The article is here. It's written by a gentleman called Robert Craig, who teaches at the London School of Economics, obviously a very intelligent man. Proponents of the new bill to stop no deal face significant dilemma over Queen's consent. I spent about an hour and a half, 2 hours yesterday reading this article, rereading it. Unless you're very familiar with UK law and the British Constitution, it's going to take you a while to get through this document. So I basically read this whole document, taking snippets that the average layman can understand and show why the bill that's passed through the Commons and the Lords is unconstitutional, and why I expect Boris Johnson tomorrow, Monday 9th of September, to challenge this either through the Supreme Court, or maybe he's going to ask the Queen not to give royal assent to this document yet, delay it while he seeks legal advice. So we'll start here. The background on this: for our purposes, Queen's consent is a procedural requirement for any bill passing through the Commons and Lords where the terms of the bill would affect the exercise of any royal prerogative. If it was passed, the effect on the prerogative must be more than de minimis, i.e. of minimal value. If a ruling is required, the final decision as to whether Queen's consent is required is made by the Speaker. Normally it is the Clerk of Legislation who decides in conjunction with his counterpart in the House of Lords. If necessary, clerks provide confidential legal advice to the Speaker for the purposes of his ruling. Now, we know the Speaker of the House of Commons is very biased, he's very pro-EU, so it wouldn't surprise me if he maybe even knew about the constitutional illegality of this document, but still fired it through anyway. Let's continue. If a bill affects prerogative, a minister must explicitly confirm that the government agrees that the bill should pass. This formally happens in the Commons at the third reading stage. If the government does not want the bill to proceed, its refusal to indicate its approval at the third reading is fatal for the bill. So the government have ultimate control. If prerogative powers are being taken away from the Queen and the government who acts on behalf of the Queen, then they have the ability to quash this document. Queen's consent is normally a formality because the government usually proposes all bills that are successfully voted through both houses. The current scenario could see a situation where a bill passes in the teeth of trenchant opposition from the government, which is, of course, because this is binding Boris Johnson himself. This is saying what Boris Johnson must explicitly say to the EU. So, of course, the government do not want this bill to go through, which is quite an interesting scenario for a UK government to be in. So, Royal Prerogative. Prerogative powers are legacy powers of the Crown that are now mainly exercised by the government, conducting foreign affairs, and in particular the power to agree treaties and operate treaty powers is an important part of the prerogative and is the relevant power for this post. Under that power, the UK government has agreed new treaties and particular laws at EU level over the last 46 years. So the Cooper-Letwin law, this was the extension to Article 50 that we saw in March, and this ties in very closely because this is a legal precedent for the bill that is currently waiting for Royal Assent now. So Cooper-Letwin, the story behind the passage of Cooper-Letwin is more complex than many realise. The drafting of the original version was masterly. Cooper-Letwin mandated that the then Prime Minister, it was Theresa May, to seek an extension to the Article 50 process under 1(2). The word seek is crucial. The reason that it's so crucial is that it allowed the argument to be made that the Queen's consent was not necessary for the bill. This was because to seek an extension does not actually have any effect in the terms of changing the date of an exit at EU level. Seeking an extension arguably does not affect prerogative exercises as a matter of law. So this was challenged at the High Court. Previously, the argument that the UK left the European Union at the end of March, but the Supreme Court ruled that the Cooper-Letwin law only advised the government to seek. It didn't bind their hands. It didn't say Theresa May had to approach the European Union, and that's set a legal precedent and why the current bill is unconstitutional. So the conclusion: the proponents of a new bill to prevent no deal are caught in the horns of a dilemma. If they had drafted the bill that only mandated the Prime Minister to seek an extension, the PM would be left free to refuse, agree or accept any extension in negotiations with the EU 27. But the actual bill tries to impose a requirement that the PM either agrees to a 31st of January 2020 or agrees any new exit date suggested by the EU 27. House of Commons procedural rules mean that the government is required to formally approve the bill by affirming Queen's consent to the bill at the third reading stage. This is because the power to agree or accept an extension is normally exercised using prerogative power. If passed, this statute would have the legal effect by whatever means of forcing the PM to agree an extension to the Article 50 process would manifestly affect the prerogative for the purposes of the relevant test as to whether Queen's consent is required. So this binds Boris Johnson's hand. Now, the reason it wasn't raised at the third reading, I believe, is because Boris Johnson's tactic now is just to tick every day down. I believe when this document goes for Royal Assent tomorrow, if it happens tomorrow, maybe it happen Tuesday, they will block it. They will ask for a delay. Boris Johnson says seeking legal advice. He doesn't believe this document is constitutionally legal. So just Boris Johnson's corner now. He knows if he can just tick down the days to October 31st, then this problem goes away. We just automatically default leave on a no-deal terms. So very interesting document. I'll leave the link in the description if you want to read the whole thing. But judging by reading this article, it does seem that it's not a constitutional document. This likely will be struck down. Maybe, who knows how Boris Johnson would do it. You know, maybe it will be approaching Supreme Court. Maybe he'll just directly ask the Queen to delay giving it royal assent, or maybe even ask her to flatly just reject it. But it does seem this document isn't constitutionally binding. I think this is one of the reasons why the likes of Boris Johnson, Dominic Raab, Jacob Rees-Mogg have let this bill travel unhindered through the House of Commons, House of Lords. It's happened so rapidly, right? In the space of less than a week, this thing's flown through the House of Commons to the Lords, back to the House of Commons. It's been flying through, so no one is really checking the constitutional legality. Maybe they know, maybe the Remainers know that it's unconstitutional, but they're hoping Boris Johnson doesn't pick up on it. Now, this is the big thing why I ultimately think the Leave side will win. The intelligent people seem to be on the Leave side. When you look at Boris Johnson, he's a bumbling buffoon, but underneath that he's a very smart man. Jacob Rees-Mogg, clearly a very intelligent man. Dominic Raab, clearly a very intelligent man. When you look at the people on the Remain side, you know, these people are lunatics. You know, you got Jess Phillips, you got Jeremy Corbyn, Diane Abbott, the rest of the clowns on the Remain side. I don't think they've factored in the intelligence that we do see on the Leave side. So let me know your thoughts and opinions on this. I'll leave the link in the description. Read it if you can. You're going to have to set some time aside on your Sunday afternoon. It's going to take you a good hour to fully get your head around everything that's contained in the document. But I thought I'd leave a brief layman's terms of why this document isn't legal. Let me know your thoughts and opinions on this. I am still confident we can leave the European Union on the 31st of October. Give me a thumbs up or thumbs down if you agree with that. Jason from Liberty Bunkers signing off, and I'll see you in the next video.